All right. Now joining the show, we've got on the host of the Sit Down podcast, the big man on campus, Jeff Nadu. Jeff, what's going on?
Pretty good. How are you, my friend? Nice to talk to you. Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing good. Happy to get you on. Ever since like we were saying in DMs, I'm a Mina fan, so getting you on is definitely cool, especially with all the stuff that's going down with Rico right now. So I kind of want to start with talking about that because Uh, I I myself I'm not fully versed on the situation that occurred with you and Rico at Barstool. So I do because it seemed like you, Paul DeLuca, and Blackjack were pushed out around the same time by Rico. So could you give a little kind of backstory about what really happened with that?
Yeah, the whole saga with him has been going on for a long time. Him and I haven't liked each other for a while. I mean, it's been years now. I was hired. I've been kind of in the Barstool purview for a while. I actually interviewed with Dave probably. I mean, this was back maybe 2018. It was pretty long ago. And I've been around for a while. And throughout my time, I had kind of had an issue with him. But when I got hired in September of last year, he kind of made things really difficult on me. And I'm a big boy, I can handle it. But,
Yep.
I always said, like, I really don't like, I get there are people that don't like me or whatever, but, when you're continuously trying to make it difficult on me as far as putting the content I want to put out. And, he was going to employees and kind of giving them an ultimatum if they worked with me or not. It was just a bunch of nonsense. And at the end of the day, like, I was coming towards the end of the contract that I had with them. And, I was very happy to do the show that I had. And I love Barstool, but, just kind of got, just kind of getting tired of it and just kind of moved on. And, we'll see. Maybe we can kind of come back and do something again. But, I think ultimately I want to make it clear, like, he definitely aided. I was just kind of over it, kind of tired of it, I guess. And, it was also the fact that he wasn't really ever willing to play ball on anything. So it was, I'm going to do this type of shit behind the scenes, but I'm also not going to play ball about anything and just kind of be shut out. And I wasn't really, to be honest, bro, allowed to participate in much. I wasn't allowed to be anywhere he was. He kind of set that ultimatum out there. So yeah, it was just kind of a weird courtship from his standpoint. And, I can't tell you why he doesn't like me. You'd have to ask him, but yeah, we'll see. Maybe down the road it could be different. I don't know, but you'd have to ask him about that.
No, with that, I mean, when you say like play ball, especially because, like you see, the video when they're doing radio, when Chaps walks in, him and Chaps or him and
Yeah, he
Con,
doesn't.
like he immediately, he'll never be on camera, going at it with people. Really, it's walk right out. So I mean, even with people that he doesn't have a real history with, like you guys, were rivals. I mean, like him and Chaps, it's through cons, so it's not even like they're immediate rivals, and he sees him walk in the studio and just immediately dips right on out. So
Yeah,
it seems
he's a
like a
guy
really
that if you don't kiss his feet, you're not going to be in his kind of group. And to be real honest, man, like I'm kind of like it's fun occasionally to talk about, but you're just kind of going over it is just kind of taxing. It's like
yeah.
it's lame at this point. Like it's the behavior that continues to be kind of put out by him is whack. And if you're a Mina fan, I mean, you kind of saw that on display with him this week. He's a guy that is not loyal. He's a disloyal person, and yeah, I just don't know what he really adds. I think the fact that he goes at people like me, and I kind of give it back to him. I think he can obviously fall back on that, but from a standpoint of like just speaking about things, he's fucking boring. Yeah, you kind of he needs people to play ball with. He should actually be pretty happy that people like me are playing ball with him, because without him and goofing on him, he's really not that funny or interesting.
Now, I don't know if you listened to, I believe it might have been Wednesday or Friday show with Kirk. He had offered to do a sit down, kind of Godfather, Sopranos esque. All you guys get dressed up. You, Dan, Big Cat, Dave, Rico, and Kirk, and you guys kind of try to hash it out. It sounds like, I mean, you said you're really ready to play ball at any time. How long do you think Rico would last in that before walking out, or does he even show up?
I don't think he would show up. I mean, we've been asked multiple times. I've asked him to do stuff for charity. Back during the pandemic when Dave was raising money for small businesses, there's kind of there's always been the legend of something called Men of Honor. It was a podcast that Dave thought about. He kind of pushed it to me and to Rico. They wanted to get him and I in a room and basically have a podcast where we just sat there and like talked about shit. And he said no to it. And then I remember during the pandemic, I pledged to him, like, if we can raise a certain amount of money from Stoolies through the Barstool Fund, we do just one episode of the show for charity. And he said no to that. We've been offered hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight at Rufferati. He says no to that. And I said this to, I think it was to the guys, they have a show kind of, they're Minifans as well, Madawaska Rob and this guy,
and Tim.
I kind of told them, like, this is a guy that, I always have said, like, I think he's terrified of me. I think if I ever walked into a room and, I think he would run the other way. He doesn't even want to be seen around me. So, I don't know. That would have to be really, really, I don't think he would do it. Put it that way. Dave's asked him to do it and he won't do it. So, you have to wonder sooner or later, like, why not just wise up? Maybe you can make money out of it and you can advance your own self. But he doesn't think like that for some reason. He thinks like he's still in 6th grade or something.
Now, moving off the topic of Rico, I've seen your kind of weight loss journey through Twitter, like your before picture and now where you're at now. I think it's pretty crazy. Now, what was the biggest lifestyle change? Like, what was it immediately you started hitting the gym, or was it the diet you fixed up first? Like, and at what point did you realize, like, I need to kind of buckle down and do what needs to be done?
Yeah, I mean, in my 20s, that's kind of been where I've had kind of, I've always just kind of been a bigger guy. And as I got into my 20s deeper and deeper, I, really started to get out of control. And it was around last year, March of last year, 2020, right before the pandemic happened. I remember I went to Barstool. I went to the office in New York to do some radio stuff. I was doing Pick Central, and I met up with Dave and was talking with him about some stuff. And I remember that day I came home. I got home like 6, 7 o'clock. And I remember watching like the replay on video. And I just, for the first time, I just kind of looked at myself and I just said, like, I remember how tired I was that night. And like, I just looked at myself and I just said, like, I got to do something about this. Like, I've kind of waited too long. I've kind of become I've accepted kind of what I was and who I was. And, I'm kind of always been a bigger guy. So I've kind of just was normal to me. But, the pandemic happened. I just said, you know what, I'm going to do it. I have time now, not a lot else going on. And I just started, I started researching. I saw a video on Joe Rogan about intermittent fasting and how this doctor talked about how he was only eating one meal a day. And it really did really great things to him from a metabolism standpoint, to losing weight, to getting in better shape. And I kind of researched it. I started doing it. And, now, 15 months later, I'm still doing it. And, I started incorporating just initially walking, that was just part of my day. And then I got into running and now I'm, there 7 days a week. Today was the first day. We're doing this on Memorial Day. Today was the first day I haven't worked out in months. I just kind of told myself today I was not going to, because I've been working out real hard lately. I'm real sore and I just thought, what, I could use a break maybe. But yeah, it's become part of my life now. And once you start seeing results, you're very willing to do it.
Now, I saw the video you put up recently. What is your goal weight? Because you said you were at what, like 235 now. You want to get down to like what, 220, 225?
Yeah, I'm at just south of 224. I'm between 223 and 224 right now. So, I think my original goal was 225. That's where I wanted to get to. Now it's like, I think I could lose another, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 pounds. But right now I'm really kind of focusing more on weight training and I'm trying to turn what I have hard, basically. Cause like I said, I've always been a stocky dude. And I feel like if I can turn it a lot more solid, I'll have the kind of ideal body type that I want. So it's just about kind of tightening it up now. And like I said, for me, like losing weight, I think for a lot of people is challenging. But once you do it, the next challenge is keeping the weight off and
Yeah,
developing like a lifestyle that you can live by. And, I found something that works. And, now I always look forward to it because it's part of my day. I leave my phone at home and I go outside or I go to the gym and I get after it.
So you're a no phone at the gym guy?
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't take anything.
Wow.
Actually I live in a building, so like we have like a community building where there's a gym in
Okay.
it, and there's a few treadmills and a weight bench and some ellipticals, and I go in there like middle of the day. I just turn something on just so I have some sound like the news or something, and I just do it, and I kind of focus on it. I feel like if I have music or a phone, like I'll always be stopping and starting. And when I work out, like I like to
Lock
focus on
in.
it and sweat and really. I remember last year in the summer, 2020 summer, I started like really becoming obsessed with like sweating and feeling like it feels good, like when you work
Yeah.
out. And I would go out like in the middle of the summer with like a sweatsuit on, and like I would feel so good. And I didn't want a phone. I felt like at peace. It was like seeing the nature, and just is comforting, I guess.
Now with Rico, not to get into the back, but I just want to talk trivia now for next year.
Yeah.
Jared wasn't able to be on Kirk's team this past in the playoffs. Rico fills in. Rico's out now. Now it's looking like it's going to be you, Kirk, and possibly Jared Carabas. How are you feeling about that being your trivia team?
I feel pretty good about that because I think when it comes to sports, I'm pretty well versed in basketball. Obviously, I do a
Yeah.
lot of college and NBA stuff. I'm good in the NFL, good in college sports. I, I'm not going to say I don't know anything about baseball. I know a lot about baseball, but I would say from a history standpoint, I'm sure Jared knows a little bit more than I do. I know Kirk's real good with like golf and, just random things. I will say it's funny because I was on a trivia team last year. A lot of people don't
Yeah.
realize this. I was on a team right before I left. This was like a month before I got a team, and we played in one game and we got destroyed.
It was
Uh,
you, Owen, and Tyler O'Day, right?
Correct, yeah.
Gotcha.
And we got dragged in one of the games, and I'm kind of I think a lot of just people think I'm not very smart. I don't know anything, but I'm hoping to get the right niche categories. Yeah, I think it'll be a great team. I think Kirk's real smart, obviously, with what he knows, and I think Jared has. Because look, I don't know shit about wrestling. I've never watched it, so he
Mhm.
obviously will fill that category. And I think we all have a little bit we can throw out there and help with. So.
Definitely, because like I watched all of their matches last season, and it was always you'd get the name that player category, and like for the NBA especially, that's usually like a one they'll play right off the rip, and that was always one where Kirk's team they're falling behind or any NFL. So I think adding the sports is a guy that knows a lot about sports is huge.
And again, I mean, I know like people, what I'm about to say, people are like, oh, he doesn't know shit about it. I mean, keep in mind, we had 3 questions about geography. I got 1 out of the 3 right. I am fairly good with countries and capitals. Africa is not my strongest continent, but I
Yep.
mean, I'm a ringer in most geography, so that's helpful. Yeah, I think we have kind of a pretty well-rounded team. So, when it comes to next time, I'll obviously focus on NBA and just stuff that maybe they don't necessarily have. So I think Kirk's just real smart. I think he knows a lot about a lot of things. So I think we'll be quite a good team.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely excited. The dozen was fun this year, but I think definitely getting a guy that'll be a bigger contributor than Steve was, or really Jared, will definitely be a fun thing to see. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I think Jared really kind of helps just because, again, I can't tell you nothing about wrestling. I can't, again, he's a lot more sharp with baseball and current baseball and stuff. So, yeah, it'll be a well-rounded team. I think we'll do quite well.
Now with NBA, the playoffs going on right now, do you still do like gambling content? Like, do you have, or is it just tweeting like about gambling or lines on games? So, because I know you're doing the sit down, which we'll talk about later, but I know you said you do Pick Central when you were at Barstool and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, gambling's kind of my main thing. I've been doing it for over a decade now. Right now, I'm doing. I have a show about the NBA. I work with a company that is kind of trying out content. They're a United Kingdom based company, and they're kind of trying to connect into the American market. So I'm kind of doing some things with building up some of their YouTube content, and they're paying me to do a show about the NBA, which I'm starting to kind of gain some steam with. So that runs until the end of July, and then I'm kind of a free agent. I'm always betting, though. I mean, I've been betting the NBA. I'm betting baseball, on occasion. I don't bet as much baseball this year as I have in the past, but yeah, sports betting is kind of my number one. That's my bread and butter. And once, we kind of get into August and into September with football, and then, college basketball, which is my number one, we'll be right back into it. Whether, if I go back to Barstool or not, I would like to keep doing it. I had a show there. I had a podcast out on college basketball. I'd like to keep doing that. So we'll see. But yeah, that's kind of my first thing I do. Always.
Now, when you say possibly make like a return to Barstool, how have, I know you may not want to talk a lot about it, but how have those talks been? Like, is it legit possibility you're back there? Because I know Dave tweeted out the DM of you, you pretty much saying like you want to kind of come back. So what's the status of that right now?
Yeah, I think for me, like I think when I initially left there, I went back and forth on it for a while, because I talked with Roan, who's a friend of mine, and he's always been real supportive of what I do there. And he kind of said to me, look, like, you should talk to Dave, you should talk to Big Cat, like, figure this out, don't leave. And I was just kind of out. I was just like, whatever, I'm out. And, I think looking back, it was a tough year to be there. I mean, obviously with all that was going on with this pandemic, I couldn't really go to the office, and, there was a lot going on kind of that was extra to it. So I would definitely, I think, kind of have a way different role as far as going back there. Yeah, I mean, we've definitely had conversations. I think the podcast is kind of maybe turned it up just a little bit, because I don't think that Dave initially knew we were doing it, and then it was kind of put on his wavelength. And he's I've contacted him about it and said, hey, I think this could be a brand. I think it's something that could work. And I would hope. I think it is. I guess we'll see. I know how Dave is. Probably towards August, he'll start wanting to kind of get at certain people and kind of bring me back around. We'll see. I mean, I'm definitely interested. I mean, I love Barstool, and I want to make it work there. I kind of want to find a home and just run with it. So.
Do you think the pandemic definitely like hurt you?
Oh, for
especially
sure.
Because of the gambling. When there's no sports, then the guys in the gambling department, it's definitely a tough thing for you guys to kind of find. I mean, you're searching for different sports, but when your wheelhouse sports aren't there, like college basketball, NBA, that's got to be a tough thing.
Yeah, I look back on it. It sucks too, because when I told you about how I was up there in last March for Pick Central in 2020, I was actually originally supposed to start working there Selection Sunday of 2020. And we had set it up. We had a start date and everything. And like 3 days later, sports shut down. And I remember Dave sent me a message. He said, look, our hands are kind of tied. He's like, just kind of hang out. He's like, get through the summer, and hopefully by the fall, we'll get you on board and we'll be good to go. And it sucked, because I do feel like if I'd have started in March, back when I was originally supposed to start, I think it would have been really high level, because I would have come on right at the tournament. I could have really showcased kind of what I was able to do. And
Definitely,
it sucked too, because I think it really put kind of a hurt on kind of what the role I had there was. You couldn't necessarily go up there. I mean, the office were closed. The gambling house got closed at one point. So it just wasn't ideal. It would be, put it this way, it'll be a way different experience if I go back there. So,
especially now with sports, like you'll have that you'll be able to do that. And I think, would the sit down pop come with you to Barstool?
I hope. I mean, that's the goal. I mean, like I said, I think this podcast can be quite big. I think from a brand standpoint, I think it has a lot of growth potential. I mean, people love mob history, mob culture, things about the mob. And, I kind of envision it, the podcast being the flagship part of it. But, I envision interviews, YouTube channel where we put all sorts of content up. I have ideas for a kind of a merchandise brand, different types of things to sell that kind of are different from what other stuff Barstool has. Like I said, interviews with just like, mobsters or FBI agents or all sorts of stuff. And, going to different landmarks and that kind of stuff, all sorts of things. I think there's just a huge kind of growth opportunity for it. And it's not just mob stuff. It's, drug dealers. It's high level criminals. There's all sorts of people to talk about. So yeah, I'd envision it going there. Sure. That would be what I would hope for.
I like, especially you guys tweet out the episodes from the sit down account on Twitter, but I also like you guys tweet out different little history stuff, like the hit with the guy with the cigar in his mouth.
Yeah.
I think stuff like that is cool. Just being able to put those pictures up, and it's a little bit of like it's a history class through the podcast, which I think is awesome. Which a lot of people, and like I listened to the episode about the Black Mafia in Philadelphia, and that's something that is, I had no clue about it, and I like the professor you had on. I thought that was an awesome episode.
I appreciate
hearing about stuff like, about like the John Gotti's, and stuff like that. But when you get into the nitty gritty of the mafia that people don't know about, it's super interesting.
No, and that was the goal of the show. Like the show, anybody could talk about, John Gotti or Al Capone or whoever, but we wanted to kind of feature, maybe people that people don't know about. The Philadelphia Black Mafia has really, and I made this case to Sean, my professor that I had on. I think you could look at a lot of the issues the city currently has and kind of the thought process that goes on in these neighborhoods from, kind of grandkids of those guys, that have been kind of molded into to kind of accepting that crime is part of their life. And they did a number on this city, that group. And I think, if you're not from here, you don't really know about the Philadelphia Black Mafia, and there's all sorts of guys, that we're going to get into. There's a guy called Frank Matthews who, a lot of people don't know. People see American Gangster and they see Frank Lucas or a guy like Nicky Barnes, but Frank Matthews is probably the biggest drug trafficker in the history of this country, and nobody's ever heard of him. And we wanted to bring kind of a story-like show, but also to kind of tell you stuff you don't know. And it's kind of something that's not really out there. And you mentioned some of the little facts that we throw out. I think there's a YouTube channel for this as well, where I just kind of go into short little videos about maybe guys that don't necessarily need an hour, but you can go through in 5 to 7 minutes or something. So,
no, why do you think like a guy like a Frank Matthews said is probably the biggest drug trafficker the country's ever seen? Why does a guy like that kind of get almost like not swept under the rug, but just not know? Like, why isn't he known? Or like the Black Mafia in Philadelphia? Why
I think
that known to a lot of people?
I think for some reason, we kind of, we talked about this on the episode as well. This was kind of a fascinating conversation. We talked about how when Sean Griffin wrote the book Black Brothers Incorporated, he's probably the foremost expert on the Black Mafia and certain Black criminal organizations. And he talked about how kind of we never really were willing to call them organized crime. They were just kind of like gangs, basically. And like a guy like Frank Matthews, I guess a lot of it has to do with the fact that, Frank Matthews has been a fugitive since the mid-'70s. Frank Matthews is the only criminal really of his level in the history of this country that has managed to, he literally took the equivalent of like $100 million at the time on bail and literally fled the country. He's never been seen again. And nobody knows if he's alive or dead. He maybe still is walking somewhere on the earth. And he's literally evaded law enforcement this entire time. Even Whitey Bulger couldn't do that. Why he's not talked about? I guess because we don't have an end game for Frank Matthews. We don't know what happened. Guys like Frank Lucas and Nicky Barnes and Bumpy Johnson, we kind of know what happened with them. We don't know what the end is for Frank Matthews, and we don't know where he is. But the truth of the matter was plus also, I think a lot of people equate drug trafficking now with cartels and with Chapo Guzman and Pablo Escobar. And we don't necessarily think of, Black gangsters like that at that level, but there are a ton. There are many in this country that we've seen, whether it was Frank Matthews or, Washington, D.C., a guy, Rayful Edmond, or really all over the place. They're all over. And for whatever reason, we don't want to ever think that there's organized crime in the Black community, but there is, and they've pervaded over places for years. So yeah, Frank Matthews would be a good episode because he's he's a fascinating guy for sure.
I think especially when you say that, it's that there's still that after listening to the show, I've kind of realized that it's not just Italian guys that are in
Oh
the
yeah.
mob. And that's the stigma that I think probably 75% of people still hold, is that it's just older Italian guys that are just
Yeah.
running everything. It's not, there's not a whole mix of it. And especially with shows like The Sopranos, which I just started watching. It's great so far, but I think with stuff like that, it just increases same that same thought that it's just Italian guys that are running everything.
Yeah, the truth is, like, there, in this country, there's so many different criminal organizations, whether it's Russians, Irish, Albanian,
Yeah.
the Spanish gangs. I mean, there are so many powerful people, Asian gangs. I mean, there are guys in New York City that have run Chinatown for years, different gangs and stuff. So yeah, Jewish mobsters, which if you know who Meyer Lansky is or someone like that, there's so many places to look, so many people to do, and you're bringing that back and having like a flagship show, and like also making it interesting. Like, I don't want to sit there and just, be boring and just be boring. Actually have interesting people, and whether it's Whitey Bulger or Joe Messino or Jimmy Burke, there's always going to be a delivery in an interesting matter, and we want to compel people to want to listen to it again and again and again.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great podcast. I like I said, I've been the Mafia movies and mob movies and shows like that, I've never really been huge into, but the Philadelphia one, I think if you're gonna listen to it, to anybody listening, I think that's one to definitely start you off. It's a great episode. But
I think also real quick, like
yeah,
that group is really interesting because like they were particularly disturbing, like with some
yes,
of the crimes that they were committing. And it really relates to today because like a lot of, over the last year or two, we've heard a lot of, whether it was Deshaun Jackson or Steven Jackson or these different athletes that have come out in support of like
of
people like Louis Farrakhan, who
yeah,
I know Kirk's talked about in his show. Louis Farrakhan runs a group called the Nation of Islam, and the Philadelphia Black Mafia really hid behind the Nation of Islam and were allowed to basically perpetrate crimes on the veil of they're being protected by a religion. And who's gonna kick in the front door of a mosque? You're just not going to do that. It's bad for business. And they've really, I think, exploited a religion that sadly has been exploited over the years. And I think, like I said, they were pretty evil. I mean, they were a group that were killing little children and
yeah, that
women. They were terrible people.
when you get into like the women and children, that's when it really your skin kind of
Crawls, yeah.
your skin crawls when you hear about stuff like that and the crimes that they were committing. Like you said, it's a heinous group.
Yeah, I mean, killing a guy on a corner or a guy, in a social club or something, that's just part of the business. But,
Right.
When you start, and like I said, I mean, this city still has, I think, remnants of that group just from, throughout the 80s and 90s. I mean, there were splinter groups that were, you had the Junior Black Mafia, which terrorized the city in the 90s, and you have direct descendants. I mean, there's a guy in this town, Kabani Savage, during the 2000s. I mean, he's arguably probably the most dangerous individual in the history of Pennsylvania. And he was literally firebombing homes of witnesses. I mean, this guy he's on death row actually currently in Colorado. He's one of the only death row inmates in America. And he, all these guys were direct kind of descendants, if you will, criminally from the Black Mafia. And they've really done a number on this city. And I think if you go back and look, because a lot of people don't realize Philadelphia is majority Muslim in Black communities, and that group for a long time really terrorized Philadelphia. So it's sad that they were allowed to do it for so long.
Yeah. What other like this week's episode or coming weeks? What topics are you guys going to be covering on the show?
Yeah, so we last week we did Joe Messino. We got Whitey Bulger this coming week. We got to do a guy, Carmine Persico. He was the boss of the Colombo family for a long time. Really did some crazy things. Crazy Joe Gallo we got to do. We still got to do the Westies. They were an Irish gang in the 80s in New York City, really a really dangerous group. We still have to do the big boys, Carlo Gambino, Al Capone, Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky, Paul Castellano. I mean, there are so many guys doing. And then, as I said, getting into some of the Black criminals like Frank Matthews and Kabani Savage and Bumpy Johnson. I mean, there's all sorts of characters. And, I think, like I said, with this show, I think it really be thrown through like an interview thing as well, where, we're getting on some really high level people, whether it's an FBI agent or, like a Donnie Brasco or a mobster, or, we've talked about doing some mob movie reviews, getting, throwing out some movies that maybe people haven't seen, getting some characters on, Soprano actors, that kind of stuff. So there's so many ways to go with it. And I always remember when I blogged at Barstool, the blogs that got the most views that I would write were, college basketball ones, and then mob blogs. I would still report on mob, someone would die or something. And, we got to do the Jimmy Hoffa show. So there's endless amounts of things to do with it still.
It's exciting. Definitely exciting. Before I let you go, Jeff, NBA, I'm assuming you're a Sixers fan.
I am. Yes. They're, look like they're going to lose tonight, which, look, they're going to be in real trouble. I mean, they're down 6 with 10 to go. There's still some time, but they're in real trouble. If Joel Embiid doesn't, let's say he doesn't play for a game or two, they're going to be in trouble. They're not a good team without Joel Embiid. It's pretty simple. That was pretty evident in the third quarter tonight. I mean, they just got blown out, but yeah, definitely concerning.
Now, who do you think comes out of the East, barring the Sixers winning their series?
Well, look, I mean, I think obviously when healthy, I think the Sixers are going to get the job done. But I think you got to go Nets, right? I mean, it's hard to kind of go against Kyrie and James Harden and Kevin Durant. They're just so terrific, and it seems like they're just on kind of another level. But the Bucks are really good as well. I like what Jrue Holiday's given them outside of. Outside of this year, they've always had like Eric Bledsoe or whoever, and Jrue Holiday gives them kind of a different element. And I think all three are really live, surely.
And then out of the West feels like it's a bloodbath out there. Who would you pick at this moment to come out of there? Because I mean, the Lakers, it's not a surefire thing. They're going to win their series against the Suns, because the Suns are giving them issues. The Nuggets look really good. I mean, the Jazz, if they can win their series versus Memphis, look good. I mean, so what are your thoughts coming out of there?
Well, I think with the West, I mean, it's obviously pretty much up for grabs. It's a shame that Jamal Murray got injured. Just think the Nuggets would be really a tough out. But I'm going to kind of lean on the Jazz. I've been really impressed with this team really all year. I mean, I think we have to take away the time that Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell didn't play, but I'm really happy and impressed with them. I think they're really interesting, really good. Defensively, they can get it done. And Mitchell just kind of makes them another level team. I think the Suns are obviously very live against the Lakers now that we might not have Anthony Davis for a couple of games. I think the West is pretty open. Obviously, always at the Lakers. Clippers are tied 2-2 again. So, the West is going to be fascinating.
Yeah, it's definitely awesome to see. Jeff, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you becoming a new Minifan too. The Minifan universe loves seeing big name guys come into the universe. So I appreciate that.
Well, let me say this. I don't know if I'm a big name guy, but I will say most of the Minifans have been very kind. It's a big audience, and I know it gets maybe a bad rap sometimes. Some of the they could be ruthless, but they're very loyal. You guys are loyal people. You really love Kirk. And I will admit, I said this on the show the other night with those guys. I've always it was weird because I got a DM last night from some goof that tried to basically say I'm latching on to Kirk for relevance. And it's just like, well, I'm just happy that Kirk wants to involve me. I think Kirk's a cool guy. I like his style. And, most of the people have been real cool. And I'm happy to be a part of it. And hopefully we can do well in trivia and we can have some fun. I'd love to get that sit down happening up at one of the restaurants, maybe Spark Steakhouse. We could have Rico show up. I would love to do it. I would love to move on and just kind of be able to do my content. And definitely. I think everyone can make money and everyone can do things. And that's one thing about Barstool that I've always ultimately really respected is the fact that, whether you like someone or not, because there are people that don't like each other there, but no one ever steps on anyone else to make money, for instance, like if Kirk doesn't like someone, like he's not going to take away that person's inability to earn, and
right.
That's where for me with Rico, it got kind of out of hand. You don't want to not like me all you want, say what you want, but don't go to people and kind of pressure them. And I couldn't get a producer. I had my own producer. I had my own social media guy. Like that was because I couldn't get anyone to do it. No one was willing to make him, upset. So that's all I asked for. I don't ask for much.
I didn't know that part of it. That's crazy that you had to kind of go out on your own, and you're working for a company and you can't even get people in the company to help you out just because of one guy. That's nuts.
Well, as Dave said, the squeeze out was on. He didn't blame me for leaving, and I think I'll get another chance, and if I do, I'm not gonna bow out, and I'll be around, and he'll have to see me someday. So
Yeah,
I don't really care much anymore about it.
absolutely. Jeff, I appreciate you coming on. Plug away. Where can people find you? The Sit Down Podcast too. Plug all that.
Yeah, just check me out on Twitter at Jeff Nadu, JFFNADU. You can find the Sit Down wherever you get your podcast. It's a Mafia history podcast. We always have an episode out every Wednesday, and I appreciate you having me on, Andrew. Always, anytime I can come on and maybe find a new listener or someone that might enjoy what I'm doing, I do it. So thanks for asking me on.
Absolutely. Go check out the Sit Down Podcast on Apple and Spotify. And thank you for listening to this episode of the My Parents Office podcast. Thank you.